Hey y'all, my name is Angela, and today we're going to be reading ATEEZ's book recs. So I was scrolling through YouTube as one does, and I stumbled upon these ASMR interviews that ATEEZ did about 2 years ago when they were still babies. I think they were in their either just debuted stage or they were in that pre-debut filming that reality show stage. One of the interview questions was, what was the most recent book you had read? And so today, ATEEZ is going to be building my TBR. We're going to read their book recs, maybe see which member's book taste matches my own the most, and crown a winner, perhaps. I want to mention that I did see Carrie Can Reads did a version of this where she read RM's favorite books or book recommendations, so I'll have that link down below as well. So the first member we're going to start with is San, and apparently he really likes reading and tends to read a lot, or at least he did. So he had 2 book recs. The first book he recommended was What the Cat Taught Me at the Bottom of Sorrow by Koto Takimori. Apparently he finished and really liked this book, but unfortunately there is no English translation of this book, and my Korean is abysmal, so I'm going to have to skip this one. But apparently he really liked this one, so if y'all are interested, that's the first rec. The next book he recommended is called Genocide by Kazuaki Takano. In English, this book was translated to Genocide of One, and I managed to find it, so hooray, we're going to be reading this one. His opinion for this one was that he started it, but he didn't finish because it was too hard. This is so cute. So no worries, San, I'll finish it and summarize it for you. The next member is Yuno, and apparently he doesn't actually like to read, but he did recently read a book, and it was Horror Store by Grady Hendrix. His review was that he picked it up thinking that it was horror, but it was just a regular book. So, cue the sad music, he was very disappointed. I had actually heard of this book before watching this video from another booktuber, so perfect time to read it. The next member is Wooyoung, and he recommended The Temperature of Language by Lee Ki-ju. There is no English translation for this, unfortunately, so I won't be reading this book. But his review of it was that he doesn't really remember anything from it. So for Jongho and Songhwa's interview, they didn't actually ask them this question, so unfortunately, no recs from them. The next member is Mingi, whose last book that he read was apparently read English in 5 minutes. And since this wasn't a novel, they just asked him what was an English phrase that you remember, and he apparently couldn't remember any phrase except for long, long time ago. So, you know, it's a good setup for his own novel. Maybe he'll write one in English next time. The next member is Yosung, who recommended the book The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Manson, which is just so on character for Yosung, honestly. I did read this book last year, so I won't be rereading it this time around, but I'll insert a little clip of a review for this book in the wrap-up. And the last member is Hongjun, who read Alphonse Dode? Oh my god. Dode? And the last member we have is Hongjun, who recommended The Stars by Alphonse Dode. I'm so sorry for my French. His review was that it was interesting. And apparently this is a short story that was published maybe in a magazine. It was really hard to find this book, so yes. The Stars. So from these 8 members, I'm going to be reading 3 books. Kazuaki Takano's Genocide of One, Grady Hendrix' Horror Store, and Alphonse Daude's The Stars. And in the end, we'll compare all the members' reading tastes to my own. Hi friends, it's a few days later, and I've read The Stars as well as Horror Store. So let's first talk about The Stars, which was Hongjun's pick. It's a short story, and I think there is a version of the story that's translated to Korean that is like an illustrated copy, so I think that's where the whole like book recommendation came from, and also why it's so difficult to find online. At its core, this is just a short story about a shepherd and this girl he likes, but there's this layer of romance, and I'm not just talking about romance like between the shepherd and the girl. It's like in the descriptions of the field, the stars, the constellations. It just feels very whimsical and magical. It's a very quiet story, and I think that lends to this very beautiful atmosphere that it creates. with illustrations, I think this story would have been elevated to a whole nother level. An aspect of this challenge that I wanted to kind of incorporate was trying to guess maybe why each member was drawn to these particular books. And I think the vibe of this story quite naturally fits the atmosphere that Hongjung tries to emulate in his lyrics and his music, that kind of very, not complex, but certainly nuanced, very layered descriptions, the kind of romance without the actual romance that they always try to do in their songs. Am I rambling now? Anyways, it's more focused on the atmosphere that it creates rather than the like specific substance of the story itself. And so I can kind of see why maybe he would have chosen this, and I think it was really interesting. I haven't read a short story in a while, like a really short story, so yeah, that was pretty fun. And the next book was Horror Store, and this was Yuno's pick. This book follows a group of employees who work for a IKEA knockoff store called Orsk, and basically there have been very strange happenings at the store that can't be explained, and it usually happens on the off shift of the store. And so the manager kind of recruits a bunch of people to stay at this graveyard shift to try to figure out what the heck is happening at the store. Now, based off of other booktubers' comments as well as Yuno's comments, I really didn't go into this book expecting much, but I was very pleasantly surprised. I think this book turned out a lot better than a lot of people have been saying it is. It is horror. It is solidly in the horror category. And not only is it horror, I think this book also attempts to make a lot of commentary on the dark sides of American consumerism and working in retail and being a part of this machine that is consumerism in general, which is not something I was expecting in a simple horror novel. I really thought we were just going to get some scares and some spooks, and that would be the end of it. There is a little bit of graphic body gore, so if that's something that you don't like, please go into the last half of this book with caution. This book kind of throws a punch out of nowhere. The first half is very mild. There's spooky things, but you really don't expect a lot to be happening. And then it's like suddenly it goes from 0 to 10 in the span of like 20 pages. I personally really am kind of fascinated with IKEA. Well, a little less fascinated now that I have this book in my memory associated with IKEA. But the chapters in between have these very interesting catalog pages that describe the furniture. And that was one of my favorite parts. I thought that was really fun. This book was just a really interesting touch. It had a lot of parodies of an IKEA catalog, the IKEA setup. So back to the original point of this video, Yuno originally chose this book thinking it was horror, and then being kind of disappointed since it was a regular book. My theory here is he read halfway through, got bored, and then just stopped, because let me tell you, if you get through the entire thing, there's no doubt in this mind that this is a horror book. So I got my eye on you, Yuno. And why I think he might have chosen this book, I don't know. Does he like horror? I don't know. I don't really... Yeah. Great pick. I really like this book, and I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. So if you're in the mood for some interesting horror books that will make you scared of any furniture retail stores after dark, please pick this one up. Hey there, so it's been approximately 2 weeks since I last filmed anything at all, much less update this particular vlog reading experience. I just started a new job, so everything's been a little hectic, trying to figure out how to kind of juggle work life with not work life. And so reading has really kind of hit a rock bottom for me, especially since this TBR is turning out to be quite a difficult one to get through. And so I guess last time we left off, I had just finished Hongjung and Yuno's pick, and I was moving on to Sun's pick of Genocide of One. And so I am 20-ish% into the book. I got the audiobook, and I'm really glad I did, because this book is just, oh man, it's not what I would have picked. The synopsis of this book focuses solely on one angle, which is that there's this being in the Congo jungles, I think, who is basically all-knowing. Like, it's this little kid, and this little kid basically is the most advanced being in the entire world, like this entire planet. And this kid basically knows the secrets to like end humanity, and this kid is a kid, so they're not really like primed for decision making. And so there's this secret operation sponsored by the US government to try to take out this kid before they can cause any harm. And what ends up happening is one of the leaders on this team has a son who is sick with a disease that is really hard to treat, but this all-knowing being has the answer and the treatment for his son. And so it's this like struggle between, do I help my family or do I help the good of humanity? Hearing that synopsis, I thought it would be a really interesting book, because I thought it would kind of verge on the science fiction, very like high intensity, kind of lots of action side of fiction. First of all, this book has like 3 or 4 different points of views, and all of them are just so slow and so uninteresting. So I definitely concur with Sam's overall review that this was a very difficult book to read. It's just not like super high action, and there's not a lot going on. It's a lot of setup, and I'm sure that later on there's going to be a lot more, of these threads all coming together, and the whole story is going to finally make sense. But at this point, it's a lot of science, politics, and war at the driest level. So today I also thought, instead of just ranting about how much I'm not really enjoying Genocide of One, I could also do a mini review of Hyosung's pick, which was The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Manson. And the whole gimmick with this book is that it's very in your face, kind of punchy, and its point is that why should you care so much about what other people are thinking or saying about you when it's clearly affecting how you live your life? It's targeted for people who kind of, I feel like, overthink, who analyze way too much every single interaction they have, because the author puts in perspective a lot of these different situations that I feel like people really overanalyze all the time, and he kind of like just takes a step back and goes, listen, it's not that big of a deal. Yeah, overall, for some reason I gave it a 5 stars. I looked back on Goodreads and I was trying to find my review for it, but I think it was just really interesting, and it was really refreshing. And the author really knows how to kind of capitalize on this style of being casual and being kind of the wake-up call voice. I mentioned that I think this book fits Hyosung really well, and I don't know where I heard this before, but someone on maybe Twitter or TikTok was like, Hyosung in ATEEZ definitely is the member that cusses the most. And I think it's pretty well known that he's the one that kind of is the most straightforward, is the one that kind of hits you with the hard facts, even when it might be a little bit inappropriate or a little bit awkward to do so. And so the fact that he kind of recommended this book that is very much like trying to set you straight and tell you it's not that big of a deal, and like put everything in perspective, and it's a little bit like a tough love kind of situation, I think it really fits his personality. And so that just kind of made me giggle a little bit. It's such a good fit for him. I'm gonna try to get through Genocide of One and not cry, and update you all in hopefully less than a week. I'm getting the hang of this work schedule slowly. It's coming to me. I just have to remember to balance things, as we all do. So I'll update y'all soon. Welcome back. Some time has passed, though it seems like no time has passed because I'm literally unmoved for this entire video. Yeah, I do apologize for the kind of lack of visual interest in this video, but this is kind of the most convenient place to film, so here we are. I do bring some good news with this update, and it's that I finished Genocide of One. Woo! So funny enough, right after I filmed the last update, the book immediately started picking up. There was this sudden explosion of, wow, everything is tying together and the action is finally getting good and we're meeting the key characters that kind of drew me into this book in the first place, and it was really starting to get interesting. And I think that excitement and that tension really carried through well even to the end of the book. The last 2/3, I absolutely loved it. It was super action-packed, and even the kind of slower, more tedious parts of the book weren't boring, and that was something I really appreciated. I think what made the first part unbearable sometimes was the technical details that kind of got bogged down with. So it would go into really heavy detail about the government, the kind of political ties that were between, I guess, mainly the US and other countries. It also got into a lot of like very scientific detail about drug development, about human biology, and if you're really not into the whole science thing, I think that's where you start losing people the most. I think the author, in trying to provide as much scientific support and research as he could into his plot, sometimes might have bogged it down instead of lifted it up. And that really just depends on what kind of a background or person you are going into this book, really. Overall, I enjoyed this book much more than I thought I would, so I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. So we've reached the end of this video. We've read some books from the members, and I think my original purpose was to see where my book tastes align with the members. All the book recs that I got this week I liked in their own ways. Like, I'm pleasantly surprised by the fact that I, enjoyed a lot of the things that I read for the most part, obviously. I think the book that I enjoyed the most overall was definitely Horror Store, so I guess my reading tastes align most closely with for this round of recommendations. Yeah, ATEEZ, feel free to drop your Goodreads shelf. All of us would pick up books a lot more if y'all started recommending them. I'm just kidding. That's a total lie. Really, was there any point to this video besides wanting to share my love of K-pop on my channel? I really don't think so. But if you all enjoyed this video or have any K-pop groups or song recommendations y'all want to leave in the comments, please let me know. I'm probably going to be doing a sequel or part 2 to this video because there are actually a lot of idols that are famous for being kind of bookworms. So that video is probably going to be coming in the future. If you all have any K-pop idols that you want to see me read their book recommendations from, if they're obviously out there, then let me know in the comments and I'd be jolly happy to do so. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please click like, and if you want to see more, click subscribe, and I'll see you all next time.